Most of this is the brief history of chemistry. Okay, so we're going to begin our brief history where Western scholars like to claim is the origin of all things intellectual. Where is that?
In Chem.
Alexandria. Western scholars claim that all things intellectual came from Alexandria. By the time Alexander III arrived in Lower Chem in 334 BC, Ethiopia, as we know it, had been reduced by war to not much more than the city of Aegyptos, ruled by a king from the south by that name. He was also called Menes or Memphis. This will become the names that uneducated primitive cavemen will come to identify the great land of our ancestors with, hence the modern terms Memphis and Egypt. So who are the primitive cavemen and why do we call them that? Well, one has to assume that Western historians consider the reign of King Menes in 3100 BC to be the first dynasty in Chem. And since most Western scholars accept the figure of approximately 6,000 years to be man's history, plus the biblical account of about 6,000 years since the creation of man, Western culture must have still been at the beginning of its development when the Greeks mixed with the people of the Nile a little over 2,300 years ago, forming the infamous Alexandrian Greek race.
So you're saying the Alexandrian Greek race formed with the people of Chem?
Yeah, it was in Upper Chem that Alexandria existed. I don't know if we made that clear. Maybe we didn't. But yeah, Alexandria was in Upper Chem. Or rather, Lower Chem. I'm sorry. Alexandria was in Lower Chem, in the north. Yeah. Okay? Keep in mind that the modern Bible was most likely heavily influenced by the First Council of Nicaea. Okay? This is a council. It was led by Constantine of Rome. Okay? And that supports the theory that the modern English Bible is, in fact, a Western book. Okay? After having been expelled 1,266 years earlier and still having made no significant intellectual gains, the Hyksos returned to Egypt to learn from the scholars of the Thebaid.
After they were expelled?
Yeah, in 334 BC they returned as Alexandrians to learn from the scholars of the Thebaid, the university city. Remember we mentioned that? So you have everything from the Bible to the Platonic era of natural philosophy being born in Alexandria. The remnants of an ancient chemical civilization that was at least 5 astrological ages old, from Leo. When the first visitors from the West arrived, around 3,100 years before the Common Era, Chem was already at the end of a huge political wave that unified Upper and Lower Chem. Okay? Western historians admit that this was the unification of the two lands. They also refer to this as the beginning of the dynastic period, which implies that there was a period before 3,100 BC, but they seldom reflect on this period. One could assume that this is because of clear evidence, like the temples in Thebes that date back 10,000 years, showing just how new their civilization really is. Nonetheless, the young Western civilization began to develop all of their, bless you, they began to develop all of their so-called science and philosophy in a small section of northern Chem, called what? Alexandria. Okay, we use the term so-called because what we now call science and philosophy and chemistry was all basic parts of the chemical understanding of the universe. Okay, it wasn't until much later, as we will explore, that these terms, science, philosophy, and chemistry became necessary. People didn't understand it, so they had to break them down. With that said, the Greek settlers were used to a primitive lifestyle that included activities that were directly related to their physical survival. They had no time to ponder the universe when they were dying at the average age of 40 and could hardly produce children. Learning how to eat properly and heal themselves became key elements of survival for Western civilization. Okay? Plato, with the help of Alexander III and his army, put his students to work trying to forcefully take the infinite knowledge of the people of Chem. The chemical people learned from all the wars that the Western world had brought to the motherland for 2,766 years. They refused to reveal the secrets of the chemical understanding of the universe. The Romans believed their military had become so strong that they could forcefully take anything, including the higher sciences. They were given the periodic table of elements along with some basic tools, and they believed that they had attained supreme knowledge. What they robbed from Alexandria only brought about the first world wars, religion, republics, imperialism, and the destruction of Earth's atmosphere.
World wars meaning that the whole world is going at war?
The First World War.
Because the North and the South went at war.
Yeah, there was wars, but the first global war occurred after the formation of these United States, if I'm not mistaken. The first global war is a modern war, surely many, 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 many years after Kevin. And what the handbook is suggesting here is that once they were given the periodic table of elements, once they were given a basic understanding of the elements, instead of enriching uranium inside of your body, they started to try to make it occur in nature. And when they were able to split an atom, instead of traveling to another dimension, they tried to make a bomb. So with the basic understanding of the elements that they had, I like how you just nod whenever I look over there. Like I'm listening. With the basic elements, the basic understanding they had, you know, they were trying to take over the world. You understand what I'm saying? They took those elements and...
That was their intention.
Right. And what came from that was the first world wars, religion, republics, imperialism, and the destruction of Earth's atmosphere. That's what they achieved with that periodic table of elements. You understand what I'm saying?
Should have never talked.
Yeah, everything. But this was, again, we're saying that this was just a small portion of the chemical understanding of the universe. So this is what they achieved with just these 117 elements. You know? So, now I want to get a little bit deeper into the history of what is now called chemistry in particular. We're going to draw our information from a notable Western author. Note his name, Richard Morris. Okay? He received his master's in physics from the University of New Mexico and his doctorate in physics from the University of Nevada. Beginning in 1979, Morris became known to the wider world as the author of a series of mainstream science books. He published more than 20 books in his lifetime, many of which were written to explain the intricacies of science to the general public. We will examine excerpts from his final work, The Last Sorcerers, The Path from Alchemy to the Periodic Table, published after his death in 2003. Okay? The book is called The Last Sorcerers, The Path from Alchemy to the Periodic Table, published in 2003, posthumously, after he died. As we mentioned before, we will begin in Alexandria. It should be noted that the author gives credit to a man named Thales from the city of Maltus, a Greek city in Asia Minor, for first pondering the elements. Richard Morris says this guy, Thales, okay, he was the first guy who pondered the elements. As you will see, there's just too much evidence to support other theories to take this claim seriously.
What was that?
What's that?
The elements.
Fails.
The first one, Thales, from the city of Maltus in Asia Minor. Okay. It should also be noted that while you may find many other philosophers that use the four terms earth, fire, air, and water as it relates to the essence of all things, Alexandria is the most notable and undisputed origin of these ideas in the Western world.